Hello, my name is Jordan and I'm here with Transcend Coffee to show you how to brew with a Hario V60. The Hario V60 is a pour-over method of brewing coffee. There are lots of different methods out there for brewing pour-over coffee. I like this one in particular because of the way that it brews our coffee. And we're going to need a few tools in order to do that. First of all, we need a Hario V60. We need a filter that will fit in the Hario V60. The Hario branded filters are typically the best for that, go figure. We'll need a mug or some sort of vessel to brew coffee into, a spoon to stir our coffee, a scale to measure out our coffee. This scale has a timer built in, which is really handy. If you don't have one that's this fancy, you can use your watch or your cell phone or any sort of kitchen timer. We're going to need a kettle or some way of heating water and then pouring it onto our pour-over device. Lastly, and arguably most importantly, we need some coffee. The first thing that I'm going to do is measure out how much coffee I'm going to use. I like to work to a ratio because it's easier to scale your size of coffee up or down. I want to make enough for just me, so I'm going to use 400 grams of water and 25 grams of coffee. It's a ratio of 60 grams per liter. It's an easier way to remember it. I like to always weigh a little bit more coffee than I actually need, usually 25.3 grams instead of 25, just because most grinders like to hang on to a little bit of coffee as it's grinding through. Next, I'm going to rinse my filter. There are two reasons for doing this. The first is to wash out any paper fibers that are on the paper filter that will get into your coffee and give it a papery taste. The second reason is to warm up our brewer and our mug or decanting device. That way they're not going to take a lot of heat away from the water while we're brewing, and it'll keep things a little bit more consistent. Next, I'm going to add my coffee. I like to tare my whole setup on the scale to make sure that my grinder has actually given me the amount of coffee that I put in. Sometimes they're sneaky that way and they'll hold on to a few more grams than you expect. Once I have the coffee in my pour-over device, I like to give it a few taps just to settle the coffee out and make a nice even bed so that the water doesn't bypass the coffee in any way, watering down the final beverage. I'm going to add my water in stages. The first stage is called the bloom. I'm going to add 50 grams of water, roughly double the amount of coffee that I put in, depending on what size you're going to brew. And I'm going to let it sit for 30 seconds. It's going to off-gas the coffee, it'll swell up and release the gas that is in the coffee. Now, after that's done, I'm going to add 100 grams of water, fill up the brewer to about 2/3 full, and then I'm going to keep adding water incrementally to keep the level of coffee and water in my brewer consistent the entire time of the brew. I'm going to add my 50 grams of water and start my timer at this stage. I pour the water directly into the center of the bed of coffee. That way, none of the water goes around the coffee and waters down the final product. It's going to soak the coffee evenly. Next, I'll pour 100 grams of water. And I'll give the coffee a gentle stir with my spoon to make sure that all of the grounds are wet and all of them are brewing and extracting in the device. I'm now going to add water in small pulses to keep that level of coffee and water together in the brewer consistent. They'll not only make sure all of the coffee is wet and brewing, they'll also keep the temperature of our extraction consistent. And I'm always pouring into the center of the brewer so that none of the water bypasses the coffee, and it'll brew nice and evenly. Timing your brew is important to be consistent and to make consistently great cups of coffee day after day. I've found for this size of coffee, I tend to like brews that take around 3 minutes. The most important thing, however, is how the coffee tastes. If it tastes sour and weak, you can fine up your grind to make that brew take a little bit longer and you'll get a richer, less sour cup. If it's really strong and really bitter, you can coarsen your grind and speed up that brew to get a cleaner and more bright coffee. There you have it. That's how to make coffee using a V60.